Hello, this is always the bit of the video tutorial series that I enjoy the most when we do our preset deep dives, because we really get an idea of how the synth hangs together. And we're going to use this preset, Summertime. Drag it into the slot, open everything up, and let's take it from the top. So, all pretty standard stuff up here, nothing exciting to see. I've got a load of quick control assignments. We'll worry about them when we understand how the sound is actually built. But a quick note about note expression, and I mentioned this in the last preset deep dive. Each one of these, you see it refers to flux. That's because this preset is based on the flux engine. So these are macros that wrap basic functionality, core functionality up, and Halion's got a load of them. And if we have a look down here, there's flux, just one of the various modules that are available to you. And the way that we map controls out of this interface into Halion is with our note expression. So if you were to load any preset, if I just very briefly load another flux preset, completely random, that one will do, then you can see that we've got note expression maps set up. So we have a quick look in these two MIDI modules that are almost always empty, the compatibility thing, but you do have to check just in case they've been used. And now we head into the layer where we're going to start seeing interesting stuff. And here we have a flex phraser. So now that we can see that there's an arpeggio, let's hear what the arpeggio sounds like. So this is why I avoided pressing a key until we were at this page, because now you can see where those notes are coming from. And if we play a chord, so can you tell that all three notes of the chord are synced up? That's because the mode of the flex phraser is set to chord. So let's have a quick look at the flex phraser. We've not try saying flex phraser 3 times fast. We've not specifically dealt with it up until now, so let's have a bit of a browse around. So it's active, obviously, and we've also got this user light on. That's quite a dramatic effect on the interface. If it's in user mode, you get to build your own intervals, your own sequence or arpeggio. If it's off, then you select from a very large bank of pre-built sequences. I mean, you know, obviously at this point we understand the nature of the Halion beast, but there's a hell of a lot to go at. But let's deal with what we actually have, which is a user preset. So we're in loop mode, which means when we hold a key down, it's just going to go on and on and on. And we're going to be synced to the host tempo in 16ths. We've also seen that the mode is chord. If I set that to like up, down 2 instead and play a 3-note chord, you get a completely different kind of effect. But in chord mode, it just plays all the notes that are held down. Doesn't matter how many. We've got lots of editing flexibility with this sequence. Velocities. If I hold the shift key down and change one of these velocities, they all scale together. If I hold the alt key down, I draw a line. If I hold shift and alt together, it scales to the left and right simultaneously. Bit weird, this one. And if I hold control and just click a bar, it maximizes it. And if I hover my mouse over the right hand border of the bar, I can change its width. So I can make that one twice as long if I want. Okay, so that's the flex phraser. We've got that covered. Got a couple of LFOs that may or may not be in action. We'll see later. This flux module is where the scripting that defines that macro is actually held. You see the little edit script button is grayed out. These are read-only, like presets, Steinberg presets. Okay, we have a single zone responsible for making the sound, and it's a wavetable. So let's have a look what's going on over here. Here's our wavetable, and we can see that it's using oscillators 1 and 2 and a noise module. So let's split them out and hear what each one of them is doing individually. So it's basically like a multi-oscillator sine wave with a little bit of detune. So you can see that there is the capacity for the wavetable to be more interesting. There's a morphing of the wave as we go along, but actually the speed is set so low, downsampled sine, that it really is just a sine wave. So as we saw, we're playing 4 of them, and we've got a little bit of detune spread. Filters probably not doing very much because it's a sine wave. Can't filter a sine wave, but it's not a pure sine wave, so there's a little bit going on there. This is obviously very subtle sound editing. We've got a bunch of envelopes. We've got a volume envelope, a filter envelope. We've got this flat pitch line and a user line. We'll come back to them shortly. They are actually in use, believe it or not. But we do have a ton of stuff in the modulation matrix, so let's just clean up a bit and go and have a look at that on its own. So here we see the user envelope. I said we'll come back to it, and here it is. It's actually modulating the second wavetable's pitch. So this is a perfect opportunity for us to jump over to have a listen to the second wavetable. We'll mute the first, have a listen to the second one. That's where we're getting our little pitch jumps from. And it's coming from this modulation matrix value here. Now when we had a look at the user envelope, it's a flat line. So let's just have a little bit of a think about this, because it's a slightly counterintuitive way to do it, but it's actually really cool. You've got a flat line envelope that the modulation matrix is being assigned to, and we have this value of -12 for our modulation depth and a linear curve. So what's going to be the effect of that? Well, if I set this line horizontal, set it all the way down, and now if we modulate between those two over our specified period of time, it's actually adjusting the pitch of the wavetable from here to here. Of course, we can do whatever we want. Pretty inventive use of a straight line envelope. Filter envelope, let's have a quick look at that one. What's the filter envelope doing? It's taking a second to do whatever it's going to do. And it's being applied to Wavetable 2 multi-voices. So if I crank this value right up, just going to slow it down a bit. So it's actually modulating the number of voices in the tone. So we start out with our single voice. Go to our maximum. So again, if we want to hear the effect at full, as opposed to that's one voice. So it's introducing voices over the course of each note played. Really interesting, very cool. Filter envelope is also being applied to Wavetable 1 level. So this is the volume of the sine wave. So if we once again just solo wave 1, maximize the effect. So this amount of effect is being applied to the envelope, but the envelope, don't forget, is a downwardly curving envelope, so it's introducing this modulation. So if we take the modulation out of the equation and just maximize the level, it's going to play as loud as it possibly can. Now we allow the envelope to unleash its full potential, and we get the curve. Same thing with pitch, little bit of pitch. There's the curve. It's much more subtle than that. And we've also got a little bit of noise level. So the wavetable noise needs to be reintroduced in order for us to hear this. So there it is, but at subtle levels, and just again using the filter curve just to take it away. Modulation wheel isn't actually set to anything. So that's everything for the mod matrix. Let's, because we did a lot of little micro edits on that then. So we'll reload the setting as it's supposed to be. And then we can see Wavetable 1, 2 and noise. But I'm going to just slow it down again, just so that we can pick out more easily what's going on. And then we've got some effects. Let's have a look at these. So we've got the phaser, which is actually, don't forget, I've just loaded this preset. So the phaser is actually muted. So I'm always curious when I find stuff like this in a preset where part of it's being muted. Why? What's going on? Well, I think it's probably just been part of the sound design, and at some point somebody's muted it and left it there. But turn it on, and you've got a pre-built phaser to play with. It's not actually part of the fundamental sound. The chorus is. You can hear it having its doubling effect, obviously much more subtle, and a bit of reverb. So this is early reflection reverb. It's got a curious kind of almost reversed effect. And then a little bit of compression. If we really pump this up, you hear it really popping the sound. There, it's being like brutal now. It's just smoothing the sound out, doing what compressors do. Controlling the initial transients, and then if you give it a boost, raising the volume floor to compensate for the attenuated transients. One last time, I'll just reload the stock plugin, and we haven't had a look at the second wavetable oscillator, so let's have a quick look at that. So over in the wavetable, what have we got? Got a square wave morphing into a much faster square wave, basically. But again, the speed is set to basically nothing. So what have we got here? Well, we've got a much greater multi-oscillator spread. In oscillator 1, we saw multiple lines because of the detune, but with oscillator 2, we have a 50% spread, which means that the waves are being selected from different parts of the table. So that's why we've got this superimposed graph, and why we've got more than one entry in the wavetable with a speed of nothing, because the spread is actually being generated by the multi-oscillator. If I bring this down to 0, we throw all of those waves away, and now we're just left with the detune, strobe. Those little lines there are from the 4% detune. But by introducing the spread, we're playing all those different shapes of wave, all those different shapes of square wave simultaneously. Now then, gold star and 50 points if you can tell me why when I press this key we see all of these thin lines. Let's just kind of take a step back and really focus in on the second oscillator, and I'm going to mute the entire mod matrix. So, what's causing this? Because when we have a look at the wavetable, the speed is 0%. And yet when we look at the zone, we're getting all sorts of craziness. Remember right at the very beginning of the video, I said when we were looking all the way up here, there's a load of quick control assignments, don't worry about them, we'll have a look at them later. Well, let's have a look at them now. Quick control 1 is set to wavetable 1 position. Well, we've muted wavetable 1, we're dealing with 2 at the moment. Quick control 3, wavetable 2 position, and it's set to 50%. So this control, when we press the key, take everything else away and have a completely stock square wave, is causing the wavetable to jump forward. Multi-voices. Now here's the phaser mix, but we saw earlier that by default the phaser is muted. So I think that's a bit of a programming faux pas, perhaps, because it certainly seems like it should be on. Chorus, reverb, reverb time, reverb mix. So the macro, the flux skin that's being applied to this sound, is having an overlay effect on the top of everything under the hood. This is one of the reasons I'm not the biggest fan of macros, because I think they introduce more trouble than they're worth, but that's just because I like to build things from the ground up and I like to see all of the components working like the throbbing heart of the thing, and macros hide a lot of that functionality from you. There are features and like functions in this synth that you simply cannot edit. They're part of the script. Remember when we were looking earlier at this MIDI module, that thing there, this is the script upon which this flux synthesizer is based. So you need to bear in mind that all of these settings are having an overlay effect on your sound, and if you deal with presets out of the box, more often than not you're going to get this colouring of sound. So be aware what the synth is doing, and be particularly aware that its quick controls are very often active and mapped, and they're having, like I say, this overlay effect on the sound. So as always, just by taking a seemingly innocuous preset with only one zone and not seemingly much going for it, we see so many different angles of the synth, and by attacking it in as many different directions as we can and trying to think to ourselves, why is this changing? When all of my values are 0, when the wavetable direction is 0 and I have no spread, or like entirely disengage the multi-oscillator, what is causing that? And then when you do the deconstruct and eventually you find the answer, it's like, right, that's another piece of the puzzle, and now when I come to do the next preset, I'm going to be armed with that piece of information. That's somewhere I'm going to need to know where to look for these kinds of things to figure out what the whole global picture is. So another few of these, and we'll really start getting this idea of, you know, how to deconstruct a Halion preset, and then hopefully you'll be able to, armed with that information, start not only building your own but understand a lot better and a lot faster out of the gate how the presets are generating the sounds that you're hearing. So I hope you'll join me for the next video, and if you click subscribe and hit notifications, then you'll be sure not to miss it. Hope to see you then. Thanks very much for watching.